Last Sunday I heard you preach. I must confess I was confused. Was that church or Gimpa?
This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And as you always know, here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Now, before my guests begin to look at the issues that we are going to discuss for you, I have a very short slide that I want to show you on the first issue that we are discussing, which is the Council of State and the matter of Ex-Gratia. Do we have to scrap the Council of State? Do we have to scrap Ex-Gratia completely? Both? We don't need them? What is the argument? What exactly is the argument? And then our second issue will be public service. Is it really the case that civil servants or whatever you call them, that they are overpaid or they are unpaid and yet they are unproductive? So that will be the second matter that we'll look at. I want us to look at the matter of Article 71. That's what we are looking at first, because it's come up in the course of the weekend, as we have shared with you, Professor Bafwa Jumandua and the rest of them, illustrious citizens of this country, very principled people, what they have to say about it and what they have to say about the 25-member Council of State, whether it is useful or it is a wasteful burden, and whether Ex-Gratia is also useful or a wasteful burden. That's what we are looking at in the first segment. So the Constitution in Article 71 has carved a certain special position for some people. Now, these people, or category of people, they take very good salaries, as in remuneration. Of course, their salaries is not up to what your state-owned organization CEOs take. The one I shared with you some time ago, where they take salaries in excess of 80,000 Ghana cedis a month, and yet they get everything. Their DSTV subscription is paid for them. Lenses, they have an allowance for their lens that they use, you know, and and all of that. They have gardeners, they have security, they have vehicles. For a poor country, people say, how did we come by all of this anyway? So your Article 71 office holders are treated as very special. And let me tell you how the Ex-Gratia matter. Togbe Afede, he has returned his Ex-Gratia for serving in the Council of State. Now, he was president of the National House of Chiefs. And by the architecture of the Constitution, if you are president of the National House of Chiefs, you are a member, automatic member of the Council of State. So by that, he served some 4 years, 2017, until that tenure completed. So he says recently he discovered that some money had been paid into his account, 365,000 cedis. 365,000 cedis as Ex-Gratia was paid to him. He says he finds this to be part-time. He had sufficient remuneration to enjoy, monthly salary, privileges, loan that they paid for, car loan, you know, and all of that they paid for. So he didn't see why he should be taking extra money for a part-time job. According to him, it is inappropriate to receive over 365,000 as he already took monthly salaries for serving on the council. Now, the salaries of Article 71 office holders are determined by the president on the recommendation of a committee that is, you know, those people, and the president's own is determined by as it were, members of parliament, so to speak, a committee approved by members of parliament. Now, the speaker and deputy speakers, the chairman and deputy chairman of the EC, members of parliament, commission commissioners for the Shraj, the Chief Justice and other justices of the Superior Court, the Auditor General, District Assembly's Common Fund Administrator, and other commissioners. Article 71, that's who they are. Salaries determined by Parliament on the recommendation of a committee for the President, the Vice President, Chairman, and other members of the Council of State, and Ministers of State and their deputies. At the last time, these were the recommended salaries that, as we speak, is what the President, the ministers, and these people are taking. The President is supposed to be taking 47,000 a month, 47,277. The Vice President takes 39,000. The Speaker of Parliament takes 35,000. That's a month. Chief Justice takes 34,000. Cabinet Minister, who is also an MP, takes 33,000. Cabinet Minister, who is not an MP, takes 32,000. I'm not adding the coins that's attached. I say coins, but it's not coins. Then you have Chairman, Council of State, takes 28,400 plus. Member of Parliament takes 28,000 plus. Member of the Council of State takes 26,000 plus. You also have in the question of the Ex-Gratia. So when they are done with the 4 years, what they are entitled to take away as, if you call it pension, so to speak. The President, 659,000. The Vice President, 549,000 plus. The Speaker of Parliament, 488,000 plus. The Cabinet Minister, who is also an MP, takes 464,000 plus. Cabinet Minister, who is not MP, takes 457,000 plus. Member of Parliament takes 390,000 plus. That's a little less than the Council of State people. Member of the Council of State, that is 366,000 plus. That's how it looks like. The question is being raised about the Council of State too. And guess what? Many of the people, some of the people sometimes that you find in the Council of State, they would have already retired from their positions as Chief Justice, from IGP, and the rest of them, and they will still find their way into the Council of State. They would have taken ex-gratia. Take, for example, E.T. Mensah. He served as Member of Parliament, he served as a minister for how many years? And for each time, after every 4 years, he took his ex-gratia. He's in the Council of State now. So what it means is that he has also taken ex-gratia again. So he would have taken ex-gratia for about 6 times or more. Is the country ready to bear this burden? That's the question that is being raised. And the salaries I just mentioned to you are actually not the salaries that they in fact must take. They normally would depend on the salaries that were determined for the previous parliament or determined by the previous regime. And then when it is time for them to exit office, then they determine their own. I don't know why they do it so, because the Constitution doesn't say so. They should determine it before they start, but it looks like they want to determine when they are done. So when they are done and they determine it, this will go up. It has always gone up. The committees that do it, they always increase it. And when they increase it, I think it was Professor Mills who got angry at one of them and said, this is unconscionable, we can't take it. And then set up another committee. The legality of that was questioned. And they tried to remove and beat the amounts down a bit. So at the end, what you have seen now, they will make a determination and it obviously definitely will go up. When it does, they will receive all the back pay, and then they will get the ex-gratia in addition to that. Thank you. I want to introduce my guest to you so that we go into these matters. And it's important to stress that for some or a good number of the Article 71 office holders, like a friend of mine will say, they can virtually live for all the 4 years of their lives without touching their bank accounts. You know why? Because they have accommodation. What is it that they don't get free? Okay? So their life is paid for. Their life, everyday life. The water they drink, the AC they put on is paid for. And their choice of health care, somewhat, for a good number of them, is already paid for. And they don't like the one in Ghana. They often like to go elsewhere to have it. So they can live all the 4 years without touching their accounts, and they'll be fine. So the question is, should the country continue to bear this every 4 years? If you take for the 275 members of parliament alone, the country at the end of the year is going to spend in excess of some 150 million just for their ex-Gratia, just for that group, not the rest of the other group. If you add the Council of State, you add all of the other people, we may be looking at going into over 200 or beyond that, just million to pay them ex-Gratia. Right, and some of them will come back and start all over again, receive that salary, and then at the end of the 4 years, they'll get another ex-Gratia. Some have done so for over 2 decades, serving the country. My guests are here, so after giving that background, let's go now and look at the guest lists. Suleiman Abrahima is Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. He joins us via Zoom. Thank you for your time. I hear you have made an application to the Council of State for some documents to be released to you. You are following the footsteps of Paul Adumochre. He applied and got it almost immediately. You applied when? Friday. Do you have your request?
Well, not yet, but we do hope that by Monday we should have it, at least given the record that they've so far shown.
No, there ought not be discrimination. If somebody can apply now and get it now, you should also get it under same terms. The standard must be the same. Is that not so?
Yeah, it must be so, but well, since we applied only yesterday, we give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that by Monday we should have it.
Okay, let's hope that they will not get you to be hiring me to go to court to compel them to give it. And Suleiman Abrahima, Media Foundation for West Africa, they have made a good use of the RTI, except that on a few occasions they've had to hire me to go to court and fight for the information that their money as citizens is used to produce is giving to them. Also joining us is Dr. Justice Youngson, Vice President, Ghana Medical Association. This will be your first time after your elevation to this office.
That's very true.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I sat in class with him at the School of Law. And it was interesting.
Don't forget that I'm always sitting just as you are.
It was interesting. And we kept asking ourselves, you are a doctor, what do you want to do the law for? You know? Anyway, also joining us via Zoom is Dr. Kwabena Nyako Otu. He's Chief Economist and Director, Labor Research and Policy Institute, Trade Union Congress. Thank you very much, Doc, for joining us. Great. But next time you have to unmute. In the studio is Martin Pebu. He's a lawyer and rights activist. Thanks for joining us.
You're
Great.
welcome.
So I can see that you have done a most unfair thing to the CRC report than I have. I thought I have annotated it than perhaps anybody else. See his own. Please put the camera on it. Kokubako doesn't do this to the documents.
It tells you that I'm not organized.
Oh, Charlie.
Yes, that's read it.
That's
spent about 10 million, between 7 and 10, right?
That's a 1,000-page document that was authored by the CRC. My own still looks new, looks good, except that I have annotated portions of it, but he has spoiled his. Please put the camera on him. He spoiled it.
We're trying to find the nuggets of wisdom that taxpayers' money was used for.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Now, so let's begin with Martin. The issue of Ex-Gratia as tied to the usefulness or otherwise of the Council of State. What would be your...
Great. So as you rightly pointed, in matters like this, I said, okay, let me look at what the Constitutional Review Commission said on this matter. And I'm sure viewers think we've had debates on portions of this in the past. Straight away, I'll say that the Commission agreed that, look, this Council of State needs a drastic overhaul because, you know, from the way they operate, we are not able to get that kind of credible, independent advice that we wish in a democracy such as ours. Because to start with, the president appoints 11 of the members straight. So he has 11 in his packet. He alone would decide. Maybe he can give his friends, you know, family, you know, things like that. 11 under Article 89, right? And then you have a rep from each region. So in a situation where the president alone controls 11, you are certainly not going to get...
So in fact, from 25, now that the regions have increased, there will be 31 of them.
Excellent.
Okay, please go ahead.
Excellent. You see it. Yes, so in a situation where you have the president alone appointing this 11, then we are in for trouble. Especially as, and when I say president, I'm not referring to NADA, the current sitting president, I'm talking about presidents. And you see so far, except Professor Mills, who was generally seen as a very honest man, the rest haven't had very good personal standings in our society. You see, so you can't go to sleep, okay, confident that your president will do it exactly the way you want. Rather, as an ordinary man walking the street, I've been suspicious of all my presidents except Mills, knowing that, look, they are looting. Forgive me, we have to be very blunt. If we don't do this, we will never get it right because we are playing all straight. Oh, look, leave this. We have to be gentle. We are gentle, and the presidents, they are just plundering us left, right, center. So for me, this Council of State, as you've stated, you've seen that generally they are not that robust. And it's because of the composition, how they get in there. These are friends. People that are usually no stranger, or usually it's very odd to bring in an opposition member. Very, very odd. The last time we raised this about 2 weeks ago, I think E.T. Mensah's is an exception, right? Yes, it's because the assemblies in the appointment, how the appointment is done, that's the representatives from the regions. The Constitution provides that each district assembly, the electoral college, is made up of 2 representatives.
The Constitution says in Article 89,
yes,
that's the Council of State. That's Chapter 9 of the Constitution. Let's put it in perspective. That there shall be a Council of State to counsel the President in the performance of his functions. Recently, just a few years ago, the Supreme Court held that the advice is not binding. Of course, an advice cannot be binding. So the advice to the President is not binding. And people have raised questions. If their job is to advise the president and they cannot bind the president with the advice, what's the use? Some say it is still useful. Now, it says, who shall counsel the president in the performance of his functions? The Council of State shall consist of 1, the following persons appointed by the president in consultation with Parliament. 1 person who has previously held the office of Chief Justice, so somebody who has retired as a Chief Justice. 1 person who has previously held the office of Chief of Defense Staff of the Armed Forces of Ghana, another retiree. 1 person who has previously held the office of Inspector General of Police, another retiree. The President of the National House of Chiefs, like Toby Afede found himself, President of the National House of Chiefs. So if you ask why sometimes the National House of Chiefs presidency becomes bloody and there's so much politics in it, you should get to know that there's actually individual benefit, private benefit. 1 representative from each region of Ghana elected in accordance with regulations made by the Electoral Commission under Article 51 of this Constitution by an electoral college comprising 2 representatives from each of the districts in the region nominated by the district assemblies in the region, and 11 other members appointed by the president. That's Martin Peebles' concern. 11 other members appointed by the president. The Council of State shall elect a chairman from among its members. A member of the Council of State shall at the first meeting of the Council of State which he attends take and subscribe to the oath of secrecy, among others. A member of the Council of State shall hold office until the end of term of the president, unless that member resigns by writing signed by him and addressed to the president, or becomes permanently incapacitated, or is removed from office, or dies. And then it says various other things as to what they will do. Yes, Martin.
Yes, Sam, good. So you've read it. So you said that it's through the district assembly forming the electoral college that E.T. Mensah made it as an exception to the Council of State. Otherwise, this one is for a certain clique, okay? Yes, classmates, friends, and all that. We certainly can't continue spending so much on this particular Council of State. And the Constitutional Review Commission also agrees. So it says that, that's at page 131, that the commission, and I just want to read some portions. Okay. At 132, it says that the commission recommends that the composition of the Council of State should be radically revised so that the number of members appointed by the president out of a total of no more than 25 members is reduced considerably from 11 to 5. That's the commission itself. But I'm talking about, I'm interested in those who gave submissions. Says that some submissions strongly called for the minimum qualification for appointment or election to the Council of State. So there's a portion that says that they asked for the abolition. I think I should just mark it. So I'm interested in the abolition. So you see that this is to say that the citizenry have always made it clear that they don't see good. Yes, at 133, it says that an equal number of submissions call for the abolition of the Council of State. Those who held this view reason that the Council of State has outlived its usefulness. They say that it is not necessary to have an elaborate state apparatus for the sole purpose of cancelling the president. And I think they have something to say. I support, because as I've said, this Council of State so far hasn't, I mean, not this particular one, the institution as created by the Constitution doesn't live up to the billing. We're expecting a robust council that can cancel the president. Look, last year, we're here, Ajimamenu paid millions of dollars contrary to the Constitution. The Council of State, at least we've not seen that they said anything to the president. Police went with live ammunition and the military to Ijura and killed citizens. The regional minister is still, Osei Mensah is still in office. I mean, come on, you can't do that. At least if your ultimate responsibility would have shown that Osei Mensah would have been long gone. And even apart from that ultimate responsibility, he's on earth. We have said that he asked the military to come in, and they came in and they killed. And even some, most shameful of all of it is that in 2021 and even in 2022, the military and police are using live ammunition to control crowds. When we have a series of inquiries, commissions of inquiry reports that show that Ghana Police Service is not up to scratch when it comes to crowd control. You have the Ryan report, Acha report, and so on and so forth. They have all said that we don't do well. And so my pain, Sam, is that as far back as 2005, the British came up with a new form of ammunition, the AEP, okay? The automatic energy projectile, AEP for short. You can Google it and see. What it does is that when they shoot at a person, what it does is it bruises the person. So it hits, it will cause pain and slow down the person. So that if you find that the rioters are too rowdy, use AEP. My pain is that how come that, look, today, I'm holding either iPhone 12 or 13. Yet Ghana Police Service, for over 15 years that we've had AEPs on the market, we don't know that we should go and buy AEPs to use for crowd control. Yet I'm sure if you were to take the top brass of the police service, you see iPhone 13 and so on. So the thing is that we are just not doing government business the right way. So what I'm saying is that the Council of State that we expected to be able to step in and tell the president that, look, Mr. President, we don't think you're doing it right this way. They are not living up to that billing. So if they are not living up to their billing, they have to go. Let's stop wasting money on them. Let's stop wasting money on them. And if we want, look, if it's independent advice we want, we can make crowdfunding. We can invite citizens. There will be ways that we'll get experts on any particular matter. Then we'll constitute them into a committee. They will look at the bills or whatever the president wants. People are willing to give free advice. Yet they won't get near because they are not part of the ruling government. That's the thing. We have so many experts, but because they are not willing to say things against opposition, no. Usually ruling governments will not take them because to get a seat at the table, you have to throw dirt at the opposition. You have to be very partisan.
The police, is it really about that? Because there are times when they use whips and how they use it on the crowd. And my memory comes quickly about when the Let My Vote Count Alliance were agitating. I remember I criticized them to the point where it was said that I was lawyer for the Let My Vote Count, but I was no lawyer for them. I was just thinking that they were doing the wrong things, how they were surreptitiously going on their blind side, procuring injunctions against them from demonstrating, and I was criticizing it all the time and criticizing the judges who were also doing so until Justice Dennis Ajay, presided over the issue later and said that the police cannot go for the injunction ex parte. They can't go for it on the blind side of the demonstrators or organizers. They should give notice. On that occasion, they use whips. You remember somebody lost an eye?
Yes.
You remember Gabi Asare-Tredako was whipped like a common criminal, just helping to lead a demonstration.
Yes. Isn't it better? Gabi is still alive. Yet when his this uncle came into office, the police are using live bullets. So police have now killed citizens. Gabi is alive. If they had used live ammunition at that time, probably he would have been dead. So which is better? Any day the whip will be better than the live ammunition. So you see that this example rather shows that in Ghana, we take 2 steps forward and then 4 backwards. Okay. That's the goat dance.
Okay, so we are actually talking about the Council of State. You mean they are not giving good advice, or they are not giving it at all? Because it's up to the president to take or reject the advice they give.
Yes.
So, and you will not know if they are giving advice on all the issues that you have raised.
Excellent. I think for some years we saw their reports. They do some work. But the problem is that it's not that type of work. A lot of the time, they are pliant. They don't serve as a good counter check. When you read the case that was done in the Supreme Court, the GBA, Tadiosori's case, when the GBA stood up, in the context of President Mahama rejecting some of the nominees to the Supreme Court. When you read the Supreme Court decision, they make it clear that we all expect that the Council of State and the Judicial Council, there will be restraints on the powers of the president. It's a restraint we are not getting. So for me, people died in a dra. Death. When police went there, as I said, what are they doing with life ammunition?
You expect the Council of State to come out to say, we advised the president, but he didn't take it?
Yes, they should indict him. Because look, let's not miss Sam. You read Article 89. I think if we go to 92, let's not mix something. The Constitution only says that they should meet in camera. So 92 clause 3 says that the Council of State shall hold its meetings in camera, but may admit the public to any meetings whenever it considers it appropriate. You want transparency. What did they do? Painful fear, then you let young people go and kill fellow citizens. It's so outrageous. Very, very outrageous. So look, to the extent that we expect that they should out as a counter check, because as I made the first point, since 92, except Professor Mills, who was seen as an honest man, the rest have not lived to their billing. They are generally seen as people putting their hands in the kitty, just plundering us.
So on the matter of the Council of State, your point is that it should be scrapped?
Yes, definitely. No two ways.
You don't agree with people like President Kufuor, who says we should rather elevate it into a second chamber of elder people who will now have the power, legislative power, to insist on how things are to happen, like we see in America.
No. There's no. They've lost the chance. They've lost it.
Interesting.
Let's just do something.
Interesting. Okay.
We can do ad hoc committees on each particular issue.
The Constitution Review Commission, one of its concerns was not only that the president should, stop the plenty appointments he does onto the council, but also that the president should cease selecting who chairs the council. Even though the Constitution says it is the council that will choose their chairman, it's become a kind of practice that the president determines who is the chairperson.
Which is terribly wrong. It's just like our National Media Commission. You see that you say, oh, they themselves should choose. But when you walk around the corridors there, it's the president's favorite who is chosen as a chairman. You won't get somebody who is vociferously against the president being chosen as chairman. So you see why we need to tweak.
Okay, Sule, what do you say? Council of State. So he's dealt with Council of State. So we'll deal with that and deal with the Ex-Gratia separately. Council of State. Is it useful?
Well, I think that if you look at the constitutional provision, it was intended to be a useful institution of governance. However, over time, given the nature, the composition, and all of that, I think it has turned out to be a very needless and, I would say, for lack of a better word, useless institution. And as Martin was saying, if this institution is the institution that is supposed to be counseling or advising the president, whether or not their advice is binding is another matter. You ask yourself all the kinds of developments we are seeing, the state of our country today, the polarization and partisanship that we are seeing. What has been the role, what has been the role of the council so far? But what is for me quite curious is the fact that if you read the Beduando committee report, the Presidential Emoluments Committee, the one that was set up to look at the period 2017 to 2020, you read the report when they engaged the council. And in fact, the council is actually, council members were actually telling the committee that the role of the council had actually expanded to the extent that now they actually represent the president and sometimes the state at certain functions. And apart from that, they have also been engaging in mediation and conflict resolution activities. And for that reason, the work has become so enormous that their conditions of service had to be looked at. And apart from that, they talk about the need to provide accommodation for members who are outside Accra, and in fact, asking for an increment in the salaries that are paid to them. And this is what the advocacy that they were putting out, even as we see it as a very needless institution in our democratic setup at this stage. But for me, I think the problem is not just the individuals. In fact, Martin was talking about the appointments of the 11 people. The president controls more than 11 because the former CDS has to be appointed by the president. The former IGP has to be appointed. The former CJ has to also be appointed. Now, if you even take these three people, a retired CJ, a retired CDS, a retired IGP, Samson, by their conditions of service, they retire on full salary. So the former CJ who is on the Council of State continues to earn the salary of a justice of the Supreme Court. The former CDS continues to earn full salary as though he was still working with the Ghana Armed Forces. The former IGP is the same. And this is the reality. They retire on their salaries. And then on retirement, if you take the CJ, for example, on retirement, the gratuity is 4 months salary times the number of years they served as CJ accumulated and given to them as, retirement package. And then whilst they receive their salary from the state, they are appointed to the Council of State, and there too they are being paid salary. And then after 4 years, they are being paid $366,000 Ghana cedis as Ex-Gratia. I mean, what kind of country is this? And for me, sometimes it's also the personal conscience. And as Toby said, this is certainly a part-time job. But you have Council of State members who are doing full-time job, being paid salary by the state, by the taxpayer, and then earning salary as well at the Council of State, and then at the end of the 4 years, giving Ex-Gratia. For me, perhaps we need to look back at the Constitutional Review Committee reports. And I don't know why President Mahama did not implement that report. I think he was the best person to have activated the recommendations of the Constitution Review Committee report. Because the report was presented in December 2011. July 2012, President Mills passed on. And this was a vice president who was serving under President Mills when the committee was set up. Given that, well, presidents come and they abandon activities of their predecessors, for me, it is not surprising that President Akufo-Addo comes and perhaps doesn't want to deal with the recommendation.
Sule, as we understand, the need to get a bipartisan buy-in was completely not working. Because if you listen to the Chairman Sebonsu, who was leading the side of the NPP, they were just not ready for it. It doesn't matter that all of them had contributed somewhat, all previous presidents or previous, political leaders had made input into it. It did appear as if suddenly they had a change of mind and didn't want the review report implemented. So from where I stand, I know very clearly that they were against it, even though they didn't show it as openly at the time. And we kept being told that that's the reason they were unable to implement, because they had done all the draft legislations in respect of it. They had done all of them. Everything that needed to be done was ready. Remember, they formed a Constitution Review Commission Implementation Committee, and everything was cooked.
And also there was a lawsuit.
The lawsuit was determined eventually, and there was still some amount of time.
Well, Samson, yes, these things happened, but for me, it's one thing saying, well, I couldn't do it because there was no, bipartisan buy-in. And what we see, for example, if you look at the election of DCE processes that were initiated by President Akufo-Addo, of course, at some point we all realized that the president realized, look, if this thing were to happen, we would lose. But we had gotten to a point where we would say, well, the president or the government of the day was so determined to have it happen, except that last minute when it was realized that, look, if this thing happens, my position will be defeated, and therefore there's no point going ahead. In terms of the Constitution Review recommendations, I don't think that we saw that level of effort on the part of, let's say, the Mahama regime. If there was anything at all, remember that there was a period, some time between the time it was presented and when President Mills died. So a lot of the things would have been done still under Mills, And so for me, the excuse that, well, we made an effort and there was no bipartisan, buy-in, and that's why we dropped it, flies in the face of, the facts that we know and what we saw. So I will go back to the point that I don't think that President Mahama showed any candid commitment towards having the constitutional review process take place. And President Akufo-Addo has made it clear. There was one meeting that I was part of, and I don't think that was an off-camera conversation or in-camera conversation. And the president made it clear that, well, he doesn't think that the constitution should be open to that kind of, amendments as were proposed by the committee, because otherwise there to be a total overhaul of the constitution. And in his view, this is the constitution that has really served our country for almost 3 decades as at the time. So if it is not broken, why do we want to fix it? So given that these are the same... Interestingly, I have said before that the first time I heard about the use of the word overhaul in respect of the Constitution, I heard it from Nana Akufo-Addo, that the Constitution needed to be overhauled. Somehow, they all seem to have changed their minds some point in time. Yeah, obviously, we've gotten to the point where we know that as far as our leaders are concerned, they have certain principles when they are in opposition, and when they get into power, the principles change. And President Akufo-Addo has demonstrated that in several areas.
So what do you say? What should be done with this Council of State?
No, I think, as I said from the beginning, I think at this stage it's a very needless institution. I don't see what their contribution is in terms of our governance. What do they bring to the table in terms of enhancing the governance of our country? They've been there over the years.
Interesting. Okay, so hold on there. Let me come to Dr. Yancing. Dr. Yancing, this position, is it not dangerous, really, that you may come to a time where you may get a very young president? Once you are 40, you are qualified to be president. And a young person may not have sufficient experience, but may have been propelled by their party into office. The Council of State is a place of elderly or elder statesmen, accomplished business persons, entrepreneurs, so that they will have the opportunity to advise such a person. And like we know in Africa, we believe in getting wisdom at the feet of the elderly.
I mean, Samson, per your description, it should have been a perfect situation for us. That is our culture, that is the way we do things, and there is wisdom in going along that tangent. Unfortunately, just as my other panelists have said, it is the way that institution in itself has been utilized, composed, that is creating the problems for us. What clearly was a good intention from the premise of the Constitution is now becoming an albatross around our necks. If you look at, let's say, the three designations for the CJ, the CDS, the IGP, you can see clearly the wisdom in that. People with experience in legal matters. Clearly, the CJ will stand tall. So if somebody of this nature is there to advise government, it's fine. The CDS, defense, IGP, interior matters, what have you. I think that if we had taken the politics out of it, such that the president wouldn't have the power, unfortunately that's what the Constitution prescribed, to appoint as many as 11 persons, but rather we had composed it such that people with a lot of experience and knowledge from strategic segments of the society, and what was done for the three had actually been outlined, so that these people will come in more or less as independent technocrat professionals, people who have wisdom in all kinds of areas, come together and give advice that to a large extent should be binding and guide the president for us to succeed. Unfortunately, that is not what we are seeing. It is rather becoming a tool for cronyism. It's unfortunate when you hear of elections at the regional level. You can see political parties, especially ruling parties, being actively involved and wanting preferred persons voted for and ultimately represented on the Council of State. And you ask yourself whether they are not going to be doing the business as usual, where people who are affiliated to particular political parties sometimes even find it difficult to tell the president the truth. And this is what is leading us to all the chaos we seem to be seeing now. And unfortunately, if you go through all the documentation that have come up from the Constitutional Review Commission, the various emoluments committees that have been put up by various presidents, you get that inkling that, look, we need some reforms, if not complete abolition of the whole Council of State.
So where do you stand?
I think that the service we've done to ourselves as a people is the non-implementation of the report of the Constitutional Review Commission. This particular thing was an exercise that covered the larger majority of the country. And the positions that people took,
in terms of monetary value,
yes,
we spent $6.3 million US,
yes,
not Ghana cedis, in producing this 1,000-page document, which I have said over and again is the biggest socio-political data that we have ever gathered as a country.
Yes, Samson, you and I were at the law school at the time. You remember our lecturers, including the chairman, who who had come back into the country were taken from us to do this job. We wish they had even stayed to give us more wisdom.
Yeah. We were so unhappy when Fiajo was being taken from our class.
Yes.
Because he was bringing us, the new thing about law is what is known as ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution.
At the time.
And he was the one taking us through, so accomplished, did a lot in Barbados, written on it. He's consulted, you know, across the globe. And we had the benefit of him. The law school doesn't always get that kind of benefit. And we had his benefit coming and taking us through. Then before we said Jack, he had been appointed, he was taking
Nobody wanted to miss a minute of his life.
Yes.
You see, so you had people who were well accomplished, had the knowledge, they went round without politics being, in quote, their primary consideration, and came out with a report which actually reflected the aspirations of the larger majority of our people. Now, if you look at the two sides, the two main parties, the MPP, NDC, if you look at their posture when this report came out, it becomes so clear that clearly this was going to water a lot of the privileges, the powers that have been granted the political elites per the 1992 Constitution. We all know the history of the 1992 Constitution in terms of its formulation. And once this came to the fore, you can see that their actions, they don't want that to happen. And that is actually going against us as a people.
People have looked at this document and say, it's not actually as representative as we wanted, because most of his powers, president's powers, are still retained. Of course, doing the district assembly elections, making it elective, is provided for, except that there was a white paper that, you know, tried to dilute it, that the president will pick 3 and then bring it to you to pick 1. Let me choose my person. You say, you bring 3, the 3 will be your own people. Then I choose 1. What is that?
So clearly, there hasn't been any demonstration of true commitment on the part of the political elite. And if you look at it, yes, we cannot say that everything in this report would have been perfect for every single individual. But in a democratic dispensation, it is a larger majority, the consensus. We've practiced the provisions within the 1992 Constitution for 3 decades now. And clearly, we are all at a point where we realize that certain things will have to give way. We need to have some changes. And we had a nice opportunity in this, and it looks like we've thrown this away. We need to go back and be dispassionate about these things and correct the wrongs that we are doing to ourselves.
Okay, so you've had 3 of my guests so far. Let's go to Doc to hear what he also has to say. A lot of people have been sending a lot of messages already into the show about this issue of the Council of State and the Ex-Gratia. We'll come to deal with the Ex-Gratia matter shortly, but let's okay, so I was trying to read out something before we get to our next guest, and this is very important. It's an important intervention sent in by someone, but for good reason I am not able to tell you who the person is. And this person says, look at Article 91 Clause 3. And Article 91 Clause 3 says, the Council of State may, upon request or on its own initiative, consider and make recommendations on any matter being considered or dealt with by the President, being considered or dealt with by a Minister of State, by Parliament, or by any other authority established by this Constitution, except that the President, the Minister of State, Parliament, or the other authority shall not be required to act in accordance with any recommendation made by the Council of State under this clause.
Yes, so that's what I was saying. They should speak out. Yes, I saw it too. They should speak out. So it's not true that everything they do they tell you that traditionally the king's advisors don't talk in public. It's not true. The Constitution makes it clear. They should speak out.
No, but what does this render them? This renders them what the Supreme Court says. Their advice is not binding. And the law here says any issue that is going on in the country, either by being dealt with by the president, minister, parliament, whoever, they can on their own, or upon being invited, look at the issue and give recommendations. Except that
it's not binding.
That recommendation is not binding.
No, sir, they should take a position publicly. That's the thing I'm saying, because they are supposed to be elders. If the elders, I'm tempted to speak to, are home and our police are killing citizens, you don't want to speak out. Police are killing citizens with life ammunition, you won't speak out. So they become so pliant, very pliant.
But Doc, how is that tenable? That you are advising someone and then you are out in the public talking and saying, I advise the president to do this, he hasn't done it. I advise the president to do this, he hasn't done it. How do you expect the president to now come to you? You're supposed to work together.
You see, these are some of, with all due respect, the difficult provisions that the Constitution gave birth to. Because clearly, whatever they set out to do ultimately does not bind.
But it's no. It's a good thing to state your position.
Martin, hold on. Does not bind either the minister, the president, or whoever.
Or parliament or whoever.
The only good in what you are trying to say is that at least the people of Ghana will get to know that the advisors, the wise men, gave advice, but some people did not take the advice. And if we fall into a ditch as a result of it, we can point fingers at people who don't take advice or listen to good counsel. That is the best thing. But if you look at it, once their roles have been made such that nobody is bound by anything that they say or do, then basically they are just expending our monies on activities that, depending on the posture of a politician, all that would have been expended becomes useless, because they reserve the right to take the advice or not to. But at least it should have been such that the system will force them to consider certain things, and then the authorities will also be bound, if not in all, by at least some of their recommendations.
Yeah, it's interesting that a retired Chief Justice would have such load of knowledge about issues and will advise the president,
or the CBS,
and he's not interested. And you expect the former Chief Justice, who is now a Council of State member, like now we have the Honorable Sam Okujeto, then you expect him to come out and say, we advise the president to do this to Ajimamenu, sack him. He hasn't sacked him. They brought a list for appointments. They brought us 100 people. All these people, we felt they were not qualified. So we advised against it, and the president went ahead and appointed them. Why should they be doing that in the public?
That would be excellent. That would be the counter check, because as I mentioned, in the GBA case,
in that case, you are trying to force your advice on them. Advice is not supposed to be forced.
But in the GBA case,
as Samson is saying, you per the Constitution and its provisions, you cannot compel them to take the advice. And if you go, if you go on that tangent on a number of occasions, you also will begin to bring disunity in the structure, because the president and the Council of State are supposed to work hand in hand. Now, if as the honorable, the rights honorable,
no, not hand in hand.
No, hold on. If the Council of State are to act as advisors to the president, definitely there should be that cordiality when they are working.
Right.
But with this approach that you are proposing, it will definitely lead to some amount of confusion.
Yes, but that's the check. That's supposed to be the check.
All right, thank you. I'm not forgetting Dr. Kwabran Yakotu. I'm going to him. Yes, do the second.
I'm saying that the 1 second is that, look, when you see the GBA, Justice Ex-Gratia and this in BHM case, okay, the Supreme Court said they advise right now, they clarify that, look, if you don't take the advice, then also don't go outside the list. So the Supreme Court has moved the debate forward.
That is on the appointment of judges, where the Judicial Council submits a list.
Yes.
And then a president decides that in this list, I don't want this person.
Yes. Then they say if
and
you
then
don't
you
want,
go outside of the list.
Don't go.
They say that you are bound by the list. You are bound by it.
Yes,
so if you are not satisfied with it, they have to bring you another list.
If they don't bring it, you can't go outside the list. So at least the Supreme Court has moved it a bit forward. It's important because the public just...
Sule, after this round of conversation, would you want to say something briefly before I go to Dr. Otu?
You can. No, Samson, I think you can proceed.
All right, thank you. So, Dr. Otu, what do you say? Council of State, useful, needless? Please unmute your mic.
I've done that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I've been listening. So, Suleimana read from the Yanti Amwabedu report about the Council of State doing advocacy. And I think one of the things in the report said was that the council now represent the president. They are hugely involved in mediation and many other things. I happen to have been in that meeting with the council. So in actual fact, the council does a lot of things outside of the public purview. Now, when we are discussing the Council of State and boxing it up with an emotional issue called Ex-Gratia, we are likely to lose sight of many things. So I would have wished that we discuss them, because I mean, clearly the public doesn't want Ex-Gratia.
Yeah, so that's what we are doing now. Let's do them separately. Once we are done with that, then we'll go to Ex-Gratia.
Okay, so my simple submission on the Council of State is that from personal interactions, but also some formal interactions, I think it's a useful institution. But like many institutions in Ghana today, they need reform. And given the public perception today, they themselves must also justify their importance one way or the other. And that would mean, for example, that some of the things they do, which are so beneficial to the country, they let the public know. They may not be able to come up telling the public that we advised the president on this and he went in this or that direction. It will be like me coming to tell people that I advised the Secretary General of TUC on this and he went in this direction. Or Samson, you are advising the CEO of multimedia. I mean, it could be bizarre. But there are many other things they do. Mediation, for example, given the tense political partisan position we have in the country today, they do a lot of background mediation between the two main political parties, which are helpful for this country, and many other things they do. And I think that they should find a way to let the public know some of those things that they do for the nation. It needs reform. I don't think that it will require we scrapping it completely. And let me deal with this other issue. So, for example, if you have a public servant appointed to the National Media Commission, he's already drawing a salary from the Consolidated Fund.
That's right.
And by the virtue of his appointment to say the National Media Commission, he is also supposed to earn some allowance, not some, in fact, a huge figure.
Yes, very huge.
And I'm telling you that the institutions get into difficulties not knowing how to pay. And they are all the time struggling because here's a public servant drawing a salary from the Consolidated Fund. And what the National Media Commission also is paying also has to come from the Consolidated Fund. So clearly, there are some conflict. There are some challenges with Article 71 of our Constitution that needs fixing. Okay, it's important that we do not box the issues. So, for example, if because of the hula baloo about Ex-Gratia, we say the Council of State ought to be scrapped. Samson, the figures you show on the Ex-Gratia on the board, if you go to the judiciary, some people would have earned 3 times what the president Ex-Gratia you showed. Does that mean that you should abolish the judiciary?
What do you mean by what you just said?
What I'm saying is that the Ex-Gratia figures you saw, you put out there.
Right.
If you took a Supreme Court judge who just retired under the Yanti Amwabedu report, that Supreme Court judge would have earned 3 times the Ex-Gratia of the president. And that is the reason why I'm saying that we should separate the two issues. I mean, Ex-Gratia is an emotional issue. From our interactions across the country.
Yes, so we are not dealing with Ex-Gratia yet, but don't you see some amount of difference that a judge gets appointed, and they are there until they have retired. And you have MPs doing 4 years, taking it, going back, 4 years, taking it, going back. For as long as they can return, they'll get Ex-Gratia. Council of States, well, there's no, automatic return, but you may be appointed back. There are Council of State members who have served over a period.
Okay. So you think there's a difference? It's more nuanced than that. So, for example, the very first emoluments committee set up by Rollins, the Green Street, actually excluded the judiciary from Ex-Gratia. They excluded the president from Ex-Gratia. They limited Ex-Gratia to public office holders with transitory positions. So MPs, ministers of state, whose positions are not guaranteed. And mind you, the judge also retired on his or her salary. So that is enough Ex-Gratia. That is enough gratuity for them to be paid on top of that Ex-Gratia. Okay. But as I've said, it's more nuanced than that. The details can be more heartbreaking than you probably are putting it. Okay. So, I mean, my take on the Council of State is simple. For me, it is a useful institution. We need to reform it, just like many other institutions in the country. Okay. And they themselves ought to let the public know some or the other important duties and functions they perform for this country, as a way of justifying their inclusion, justifying their importance, at least giving the public perception that it is a useless institution.
Interesting there. So at least we have one out of the three of you, four of you, who has a different view on the Council of State and tells us how important their mediation roles and the rest of them, contrary to the way you guys see it. Sule, let me bring Sule in. Sule, are you minded to be cautious in saying it should be scrapped? Listening to Dr. Otu about the mediation that they do quietly, particularly when these two, the duopoly, come to a point where they want to destroy this country with their politics?
Well, Samson, I think that Dr. Otu has made very concrete points. Unfortunately, I am not quite persuaded in terms of my position on the usefulness or otherwise of the Council of State as we have it now. Remember, in my submission, I started by saying that if you look at the wording in the Constitution in terms of the creation of the Council of State, it is intended, or it was intended, to be a very, very important pillar in the architecture of our governance. However, over the years, and given what we have had before and what we have now, in terms of even their mediation, I think they would be more powerful and useful in mediating intra-party issues. In this case, currently, in terms of the MPP, because the reality is that the duopoly you talk about, the challenge we have now is also the issue of trust, where even the Peace Council, which we all know has played a very significant role in terms of conflict resolution, mediation, and so on and so forth. At all times, the party in opposition doesn't trust it.
That's right.
So if you have a Council of States, 11 members appointed by the president, 3 members, retirees, CJ, IGP, CDS, appointed by the president, and the government of the day having significant influence in terms of who is elected or who gets elected. So, for example, Upper East, represented by Mr. Alaji Sule Yeremia, or the Tongo Rana. Alaji Sule Yeremia was once the MCE for Boku. The Tongo Rana, we know, only resigned from Parliament on the ticket of the MPP when he was enscaled, and several others. So, indeed, when you look at it, out of the current 31, you may perhaps be able to point to about 5 or 6 that you say, well, we don't know their political affiliations and so on and so forth. and you say that this entity would mediate between MPP, NDC, and NDC, for example, who have the confidence that, well, they will be neutral and so on and so forth. If we do that, we are deceiving ourselves. So for me,
that's good.
The proposition now, and as it has always been, is not one that serves the purpose for which it was created. And to that extent, I think it's an entity that continues.
Thank you.
To consume.
I'm taking a break to return so that we deal with the question of the Ex-Gratia. And that is where Dr. Nyako Otu will be of immense support to us. And yes, Ex-Gratia. And Sule has read portions of the Boando Committee report. Yes. And Dr. Nyako Otu says it is he used the word, is it depressing or something? The first time I had the opportunity of that report, when I sat and read it, Martin, I tell you, I was so depressed reading what we hand out.
Yes.
You know, I asked myself, so someone's life is paid for by the state, including his toothpick.
Excellent.
Okay? I mean, anyway.
Yeah, so my point is that, yes. You know, we discussed it in the context of the First Lady rejecting the payments. You see, at that time, we're in the other studio when the report came out. And you remember that?
After Ghanaians cried.
Yes, but at least I still love my heart out to her that she did it. So many people should reject. Martin Amidu rejected his payments when he left office. Toby has joined. So more people should do, so that we create that culture of rejecting double payments, you know. And let me put this quickly.
You were going to make a comment on the Council of State.
Yes, but let me just put in that, you know, currently standing before the court, there are some former ministers in court for receiving double salary. So this should be a lesson, of course, without saying anything about the merits of the case.
Right.
Yes, but the point is that listen, Dr. Listen, Sam, we have an act on Parliament, National Peace Council, mediation and all that, that is their remit. So Council of State should not be extending their tentacles into mediation. We have a national peace architecture. This can't be a reason why we should retain Council of State. When there's a peace architecture, the Catholic Church...
but the Council of State precedes the Peace Council.
No, but we've set up a peace architecture.
Which is our creation, not the Constitution's creation.
Yes, but the Constitution too is not saying that generally there should be peace ambassadors. No, as Suleimana is shown, a lot of them are politicians. They are mostly politicians. So you don't have generally we don't have enough honest brokers there because they are partisan. So let the Peace Council function. And then let's also add this. One is about the scrapping. Yes, this rebuttal.
The Peace Council has also been attacked.
Oh, but it's normal. In every society, everything that you do, look at Toby returning this money. Somebody that we should be lauding from the rooftops. People are attacking him. But Sam, the last point is that, you see, having said that, what do you call it? We should retain on the matter of the Council of State. When we scrap it, there are experts who are willing to give free advice. They are in droves. Check. We don't lack Ghanaians in various fields. They want to give free advice, but nobody wants to take them in.
In fact, Professor Ajmandia and the rest of them say that the president, when you go to the presidency, the reason the presidency is so bloated is because they are all classes of advisors. And the presidency looks for the best of, people in the fields. So when it comes to media, you have Kuku Sechiado there. You can't question his capacity. You have Oboshi Sae Kofi there. Well, she was deep in the politics, but she's media good person. And they have all these professors they have gone to pick from the universities, and they have kept them at the presidency. So the question is, how much advice does the president need?
Excellent, that's it. So that's why the Council of State should take a back seat.
Yes, Doc.
I mean, if, for example, we have said that the ex-Chief Justice appointed to the Council of State, because he's already on a salary by the state, having retired on their salary, those people are doing this work voluntarily. If he has said that all those already drawing salary are doing this work voluntarily, they are a club of elderly statesmen put together to advise the president. But because we know they are already on a certain salary, they ought not to be paid. Couldn't we have done that? And that is what I talk about, reforming the institution Council of State rather than abolishing it. I agree perfectly with the conditions and all the things we lavish on them compared to the ordinary teacher or the nurse. But I think that we should move the debate beyond the fact that people are partisan or not. In this country, if you see two goats on the street fighting, one of them is likely to be for an MPP and another is likely to be for NDC. I think that we need to move beyond our partisan debate and rather reform the institution in a manner we want. It is the Constitution that created the Council of State for a certain purpose, but its own provisions itself limited what the Council of State can do. And it ought to change.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Its own provisions, including the Article 91.3 that we have just referred you to, they have the power to advise on anything to the president, to a minister, to parliament, to any authority in this country, but their advice is not binding. The people can decide to just throw them out, and that's the interesting part. We take a quick break here. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here in Newsfile, we put Ghana first. It is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, home is where one starts. Duraplast, where Duraplast goes, water flows. And Farnet Ghana, think wood, think Farnet. We will be right back.
Oh, Charlie, close the window small. Your room be too bright, oh.
Why, you be vampire where you know they like sunlight?
Oh, my guy, my eyes. Behind the PC problem, in the sun problem, common light bulb stuff.
This no matter. I beg go Robert & Sons. Oh, yeah. Then my chick to him, I know correct. Cry. Where Robert & Sons sort them out sharp. Now, so stylish frames in the wrong.
We go Robert & Sons right in. No, I was sitting inside proper.
For over 25 years, Robert & Sons continues to provide specialist eye care for both adults and children. Locate us at Adabraka, Adenta, Kumasi, Usudankwa, Tema, Weja, and East Legon. Call 050-151-9111. Robert & Sons, seeing is believing.
Hannah and Paul have asked their family and friends to join them here today to reaffirm their wedding vows since the first time. Hannah, Paul.
You're the tenant of my heart, often behind in the rent, but impossible to evict.
10 years. If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't do it any different. Your car breaking down, the lift, meeting you at Auto Chill, and from then on, one chill leading to the other. I have changed my car 6 times since, but never my air conditioning installers, nor you, my wife.
For expert craftsmanship and impeccable after-sales service, AutoChill has it all. AutoChill is located at Lati Junction next to the Washing Bay.
Telephone 0243-474-788 or 0244-365-447. AutoChill. Stay chilled.
So you're a style seeker. You just love it when people stop and stare as you drive by. That's why you always select top-of-the-range products that make you the talk of the neighborhood.
I love it.
You revel in comments they make behind your back. No wonder you choose from the new Peugeot 2008, 3008, and 5008 SUV range that makes every eye pop each time you cruise along.
Wow.
Now that's how to change the game and give people something to talk about. Stop by Silver Star Auto today and let's talk about your new Peugeot SUV.
Peugeot.
On Friday, 24th June 2022, Raven Consulting GH presents Africa Family Business Summit 2022 with a theme Building Resilience in Family Businesses for Continuity. Speakers for this year's summit include Mr. James Mwagi, Sir Sam Esunjuna, Dr. Russell Thackeray, Mrs. Esiri Agbe, Mr. Theodore Albright, Mrs. Kate Kote Papathio, Dr. Moses Akwa, Miss Franca Maria Andal, and your convener, Mr. Dennis Oteng. Remember, the event is on Friday, 24th 24th June 2022. Time, afternoon session 1 p.m. An executive workshop with Dr. Russell Takare. Evening session 6 p.m. Networking dinner and AFB conference. The venue is the Kempinski Hotel, Gold Coast City, Accra. For details of participation and corporate packages, please contact 0509 732 535. Partners ACCA Labionka Company Limited, Kempinski Hotel, Apex Human Consult. Other events, media partners, Joy 99.7 FM, Joy Business, Business and Financial Times. This event is powered by Raven Consulting GH.
Millennium Insurance has enhanced its motor insurance policy cover to make life more comfortable for you, our valued clients, and in the event of vehicle breakdown whilst on the road. To ensure your safety and that of your vehicle, Millennium Insurance will ensure that your broken down vehicle is towed to a safe place within 1 hour of call and 30 kilometers radius from the place of breakdown. This service is absolutely free. Millennium Insurance, your trustworthy partner, is on standby to be of service to you. Contact us now on 0501 394 997 or 0501 285 821. Terms and conditions apply.
Millennium Insurance, your trustworthy partner.
Oh, Charlie, close the window small. Your room be too bright, oh.
Why, you be vampire where you know they like sunlight?
Oh, my guy, my eyes. Behind the PC problem. In the sun problem. Common light bulb self.
This no matter. I beg go Robert and Sons. Oh, yeah. Then my chick to him, I know correct. Where Robert and Sons sort them out sharp. Now, so stylish frames in the wrong.
We go Robert and Sons right in. No, I was sitting inside proper.
For over 25 years, Robert & Sons continues to provide specialist eye care for both adults and children.
We found and returned 8,000 Ghana cedis to a certain woman. There were a lot of contributions and donations to him, and even the vice president donated 25,000 Ghana cedis to him, if I'm not wrong. I believe the essence of the whole exercise was for people to know that we still have good people in Ghana and that good deeds pays. So a few weeks down the line, we woke up with another good news of a Council of State member returning over 300,000 Ghana cedis as his ex-gratia back to government. And his reasons were that he has been given enough for his services. He received salaries, he received allowances, they were given cars, and they even gave them loans, of which he paid back his loan. So what more was he expecting? And remember, Tobe Afedi is a very accomplished man. We have a lot of people as members of the Council of State who have served in this government. Look at somebody like E.T. Mensah. How many ex-gratias has he received before he became a Council of State member? Yet he received another ex-gratia. The greed in our system is too much. As a nation, we celebrated somebody who returned 8,000 Ghana cedis to an individual, and we are castigating another one for returning over 300 Ghana cedis. 8,000 is about 37 times less than what Tobe returned. Yet the whole nation celebrated him, gave him a lot of money, including the vice, for good work done. And we are calling Tobe Afedi a hypocrite. Why are you disrespecting Tobe Afedi for what he did? Why? You people have been used as agents of distractions. They are paying you to be agents of distraction. This cathedral project, they told us that the project was a personal project of the president, and so the nation or Ghana was not going to be the ones to pay any money into that project. There are documents to show that about 147 million has drawn again at the blind side of Ghanaians to add to that project. So as we speak, about 200 million have been spent so far from government coffers to support a project that they said government was going to have nothing to do with it. And Ghanaians are not aware. Paul, you and your colleagues at your age, at your prime age, you should be the ones to be fighting for this country. Yet you are the one colluding with the government to destroy the future of our children and our grandchildren, and you are happy about it. How much are they paying you to do what you are doing? In 10 or 15 years, when they play these videos that you keep making to you, will you be proud? What is wrong with you guys? As if we are witches. and we don't like good things. You are celebrating mediocrity. You celebrate a guy who returns 8,000 to an individual, and you are castigating another who deserves all the celebration for returning over 300,000 Ghana cedis to the state that claims not to be having money. What is wrong with us? We should stop this nonsense. Why will people that have spent so much from government will still continue to be taking ex-gratia? For what?
The voice of an ordinary Ghanaian who decided to do a recording and, shared it on social media that we also are sharing with you. And that's how Ghanaians are expressing their sentiments when they got to learn of the ex-gratia payments that has been returned by Togbi Afede. So let's go to Dr. Nyako to begin this discussion. We should look at the question of ex-gratia and whether or not we should keep it, rather than focus on whether, somebody has a right to return it or does not have a right to return it, even though they are entitled, correct?
I agree to a very large extent. We should. The unfortunate situation in which we find ourselves, and I have done a number of consultations across the country, the public is very much intensely against ex-gratia, at least in the way we have implemented it in the Fourth Republic. Unfortunately, the beneficiaries have a different view. The MPs strongly defend it. Strongly. And they will be the ones that will initiate the kind of reforms we need. If they are the beneficiaries and they think there's nothing wrong with it, we are in a bad situation. Okay. Now, the ex-gratia is stated in the Constitution as gratuity. So I've seen one MP saying that there's nothing ex-gratia in the Constitution. It is the same as gratuity in this context. That MPs and those ministers, Article 71, will be paid ex-gratia, but it didn't tell us how much and how they should be paid that ex-gratia. And in ordinary common parlance, in labor economics, ex-gratia is a thank you. A gratuity is a thank you an employer says to an employee. So we could, for example, decide that at the end of their tenure, we give them a work clock, just like some public or civil servants also receive a work clock as a thank you to them. Unfortunately for us, at the start of the Fourth Republic, when the Green Street Committee was set up, and let me, even before the ex-gratia, let me say that Green Street in 1993 regarded all Article 71 office holders as merely public sector workers. So Green Street didn't create a salary structure separate for them. Green Street actually put them on a salary structure which was prevailing in the public sector. We called it the A18130 series. So the president was on the same salary structure as a teacher in 1993. Of course, in the intervening years, things have changed so drastically that the Article 71 has become a club of some sort. With a salary structure that is so enhanced, that is so radically different from the single spine salary structure as we know it today. Now, on the specific case of ex-gratia, I say unfortunate for us because the Green Street itself awarded ex-gratia to MPs. I think it was 3 months, 2 months per each year served. It has since been enhanced to 4 months. Now, Samson, if you look at the Yantiamwa Bedu report, the committee debated this intensely and came to the conclusion that if you take, for example, a Supreme Court judge who retires on their salary, those people shouldn't have the same ex-gratia, even if they ought to have it, as say an MP with a terminal 4-year term. So, for example, they decided that a High Court judge should get 1 month per each year served. An appeals court judge should get 2 months per each year served, and a Supreme Court judge should get 3 months per each year served. MPs will get 4 months. But guess what? The reaction was that that kind of recommendation actually varies their conditions of service to their disadvantage. And you know, somewhere in the Constitution,
yes,
you are forbid from doing that. Yes. But the question is that if it is in the discretion of the employer to give you a thank you, must you decide what that thank you ought to be? Okay. So I'm saying in some countries, there's a gratuitous act, which means that for both public and private sector employers, it is compulsory for an employer to give you a gratuity in some jurisdiction. So all workers receive it. But that gratuity is a token. It is not 1.6 million Ghana cedis when you are going home. It is a token. And that is where we should focus on. It's not so much about abolishing Ex-Gratia. It is about deciding collectively as a country how much Ex-Gratia we ought to be giving to our parliamentarians when they retire from parliament. And should they receive it endlessly? If they come to parliament anytime they go, should they receive it? These are decisions we need to be making. Unfortunately, again, for us, apart from the opposition and the resistance or the beneficiaries, we seem to be discussing these issues anytime something happens, and we all get worked up and we all get emotional, and then we talk, but actually the people who are supposed to do something about it don't hear us. They don't agree with us, and this thing will keep recurring. Can you imagine the number of times you have had a program on Ex-Gratia? What has happened? We seem not to be moving forward.
Interesting point there. Sule, let me bring Sule in before the two lawyers come in. But Doc will stay there for us because he has come closer to these issues, and because he's also, from where the background he's coming from, he can guide us properly in this discussion. Yes, Sule, what do you say on the matter of the Ex-Gratia? Should that also be scrapped, as some are getting angry about and suggesting? And look, and having hosted this show for a decade or so, I can tell you this matter has come up so often.
Yes.
Yeah, so often that sometimes it's surprising. We just talk about it and it ends. Then we have another committee appointed and they bring it. The public doesn't get to know. Sometimes the media, we are able to get to know the details, and we share only the salaries. We don't share the other things, which you may say is even bigger than salary.
Well, Samson, first of all, in the consultations of the Constitutional Review Commission, there were divergent views as to whether it should be maintained or scrapped. There were people who said, look, Ex-Gratia is needless, is so much burden on the taxpayer and all of that. And there were others who said, no, we think that it ought to be paid. At the end of the day, I think the recommendation was that, well, it has to be maintained, but structured in a way that wouldn't burden the country so much. And to also be based on 7 principles: fairness, justice, the capacity of the state to pay at the time and also in the future. So if you read the Professor Yantiamwa report, it also alludes to those facts in terms of fairness, justness, capacity of the state to pay, and all of that. Now, in the Yantiamwa report, for example, you look at the MP's salary for 2016, the year 2016, was around 19,136 Ghana cedis. Now, at that time, the highest paid employee on the single spine salary structure was 5,325. So you look at the difference, 19,000 and then 5,000. And quite often, it is not because the person on the single spine salary structure is less qualified, less educated, or less experienced. It is because they find themselves in the public service and not, say, in parliament or in any Article 71 position. Again, at the same time, if you look at the minimum earner in 2016, minimum Article 71 earner in 2016, it was 11,600. The minimum earner on the single spine salary structure in 2016 was 178 Ghana cedis. 11,000 and then 178 Ghana cedis. At the end of 4 years, the person who is earning 11,000 as minimum is entitled to an Ex-Gratia, as we are talking about. You ask yourself, where lies the fairness? And in fact, the Ntiamwa report even highlights the fact that subsequent adjustments that were made the discrepancy even much more wider in terms of the difference between Article 71 earners and those on the single spine salary structure. And that is the situation we are talking about. Samson, I'm not in this case trying to pick on, let's say, the retired CJ who is on the Council of State, for example, because every Council of State has had a representative who is a retired CJ.
The Constitution commands it. It's sort of automatic. Yes. Unless at the time there are more than 2 retired CJs, then it will be for the president to determine which one of them I appoint. Exactly. If there are more than more than one retired IGP, then the lot is on the president to determine who I pick.
Yes. Now, Samson, so just let me use that as an example in terms of what is recommended in the case of the CJ. And I'm talking about on retirement, the person is entitled to 24-hour security. The person has the option to purchase one duty post vehicle. The person has protocol courtesies made available where necessary. The person has, for office holder and then the spouse, there is medical and dental services provided. Then the person retires on salary, and the gratuity is 3 months salary for each year the person served as CJ, 2 years of, or CJ or Supreme Court judge, 2 months salary for each year served as appeals court judge, and 1 month salary for each year served as a high court judge. So this is what a CJ retires on. And then on top of this, this same person who is getting all this at the cost of the state, because of his expertise or her expertise, the competence, the experience, and all of that, is appointed onto an entity called, let's say, the Council of State, to help advise the president and all of that. Whilst doing that, she earns or he earns all these. And then plus the recommendation that you saw, 19,000 or is it 21,000 to a member of the Council of State each month. And then after 4 years, as we have learned in the Togbi case, 365. Something. I mean, what kind of system?
Member of Council of State presently is 26,000.
Yes. And so you ask yourself, what kind of structure is this?
So Sule, I need a certain understanding. Let me bring in Dr. Yankotu here. Doc, does it mean that somebody who has retired as an Article 71 office holder, who is retiring on their salary, means they will continue to receive their salary even though they are retired, and then they will continue to receive all the benefits that they were getting, that the Constitution says or the recommendation says they should get. Then once they are taken to Council of State, they will still they will again be drawing 26,000 every month. The new privileges, including the car loan, of course, doesn't look like there's any interest in it, like the MPs also get. They'll get all of these things and the new privileges, and then at the end, they'll get another Ex-Gratia. Is that what it is?
I mean, I cannot state that for a fact, but it looks like that is what it is. Yes. We need to check. Because, I mean, the way you put it is bizarre. You understand? But it looks like that is what it is. I'm not saying that for a fact. But you see, Samson, this thing, and I'm taking a historical view of it, buttressing the point that we have not moved far. So when the Green Street Committee report was presented, it was very progressive. We put them on the existing salary structure. But in 1998, there were huge concerns and dissatisfaction, and I'm reading from one of the reports.
Okay.
As there were huge concerns and dissatisfactions expressed by members of the Council of State in 1998, ministers and MPs on their emoluments. Now, following these concerns, the Green Street Committee was recalled to try to undo some of the things they had, the progressive things they have done. Okay. And that is where this whole bizarre salary and emoluments arrangement began. Okay. So I think we have had a long history, at least since the Fourth Republic. And we have debated this, but we seem not to be moving forward. But Samson, remember that in 2011, the ex-MPs of the Third Republic actually sued government for Ex-Gratia.
Right.
You remember?
That's right.
I don't know what was the outcome. The ex-MPs of the Third Republic under Liman. So despite the seeming anger of the public, the political class seemed to be in a world of their own. And that is perhaps the reason why we are not moving forward.
Yeah.
So our discussion should be about how we move forward, and so that in the next year or two, you don't assemble this panel to come and talk about Ex-Gratia and Article 71. The Constitutional Review Committee report is excellent.
Okay.
But it is until it translates into a revision of the Constitution, I mean, it will still remain a recommendation on the shelves, which Martin Pebo and others will quote copiously from.
Right.
But it doesn't translate into the wishes of the people.
Thank you. Sule, you were making the point when I brought him in to explain. Look, it's plain on its face. I'm a host. I'm not supposed to be projecting opinions as much as so I had to ask him to say it, because if like you put it, that's what it is. Yes. And the law actually, in respect of the president, says they are whatever should not be varied, to their disadvantage. So whilst you are working as president, you are earning 46,000, is it? And then once you go out as president, you continue to earn the 46,000. Nothing should be changed. If it has to be changed, it must go up. It shouldn't come down. And then all the privileges, having 2 cars, to be changed every 3 years, and all of those things. Okay, you finish your point, eh?
Yeah, Samson, I think that it's really bizarre. If it's members of parliament, the point they made in terms of seeking enhancement to their salaries and ex-gratia and all those things was that, a lot of the time when our colleagues leave parliament, they live a miserable life. Sometimes they actually mobilize themselves, come to see us in parliament, and we have to mobilize and support them because they really have nothing to live on. And therefore, we need to improve their ex-gratia. And in fact, they were even talking about also having them on a certain pension scheme and so on.
That's right.
But a member of parliament, not the speaker, not deputies, not first deputies, not the rankings and so, the whips, 28,000 Ghana cedis. And then somebody on SSS, single spine salary, takes perhaps less than 3,000, 4,000. In fact, maybe that's another conversation where we are told people in public service are actually being overpaid when their average is around 3,500. Then the person receiving 28,000 says, look, when I go out, I live a miserable life. So I need you to pay me more as a state. And then you have a teacher or a nurse who would serve for sometimes 20, 30 years, goes home with 25,000 Ghana cedis or 30,000 Ghana cedis. And the person who serves 4 years and gets close to 400,000 Ghana cedis says that's small, because when I leave parliament, upon all the 28,000, 400,000, I go and I suffer and I need more from the state. So it's a bizarre situation we find ourselves.
And what you are talking about, does not include the allowances they get.
No, absolutely. And for me, something.
Inus Afuseni was public the other time. Was it public? Am I saying something that's private publicly and thinking it's oh Jesus Christ? Okay, so our job is that beyond being a lawyer, our job is that we keep people's confidences. So I would say that there have been MPs who have said that their allowances, they forget about it, they don't even look at it because they don't need it. And then maybe at the end of their tenure, they go for the allowances, and the allowances alone is able to build them, you know, a good house.
Samson, I think that it comes down to two things: leadership and personal conscience. I think Professor Mills demonstrated that there was that desire, patriotism, and commitment to right the wrongs in our society. Unfortunately, you know, he passed on and couldn't implement his vision and all of that. We have a president now and the various leaders in our various sectors. If they decide, look, we have to build a country, we have to build a country that would be sustainable, a country that will profit and benefit future generations, and how we are going is unsustainable, I think something can be done. But unfortunately, the people who make the decisions are the same people who decide these things for themselves. So the president's emoluments shall be decided by Parliament, and then the president shall appoint a committee to decide that of Parliament. So you decide mine, I decide yours. If you vary mine to my disadvantage, I will do the same thing to you. Unfortunately, we haven't had individuals, many of them, advocating for the right thing to be done. So we are appealing to our leaders. Look, we are building a country together. It's time to do the right thing. It's time to ensure fairness, justness, equity, so that collectively we can build a country that would serve the interests of future generations. But how we are going and how we've gone over the years, I don't think it is sustainable.
Thank you very much. Yes, Justice, before I go to Martin. Martin has his Constitution Review Commission's reports open, ready to show us what many Ghanaians said about Ex-Gratia and what the view was after $6.3 million. He's still gathering dust.
Samson, I want to introduce another dimension to this discussion. So far, the focus has been Article 71, 71, 71. But the people of Ghana ought to know, and I think your platform is one of the key ones for us to educate. Look, it is not only about those prescribed in Article 71. Through the instrumentality of acts passed by Parliament, others have also been roped in beyond those mentioned in 71. So you look at, for example, the Local Government Service Act. It has roped in the MMDCs, the Presidential Staffers Act 1993 thereabout. That has also roped in other persons beyond this. So the situation we have in our hands is actually a gigantic one that goes beyond what the Constitution has also prescribed, except that these ones came through acts of Parliament. And now you have all manner of persons wanting to be in that category that has been loosely described as Article 71. There are also administrative instructions that have also been used to put other persons on similar arrangements. So then the question then is, the key principles of equity, fairness, reasonableness, ability to pay, and what have you, where are we taking these bets? Clearly, if you look at the Professor Yatel Bedu report, as they did the public consultations, the greater majority of the people were mad, angry, and not happy about the wide disparities between those who have now been christened under this arrangement called Ex-Gratia Article 71, what have you, and the ordinary public sector worker on the single spine policy. If you look at the structure, and Suleimana rightfully said it, there are a lot of inconsistencies, disparities, and it becomes so bizarre, such that we all find ourselves in a situation where the people who are benefiting from same, unfortunately, are the ones who are also driving the agenda. they are not ready to forgo what they are enjoying now. Article 71, even though it doesn't mention Ex-Gratia specifically, it defines salaries to include retirement benefits and awards. And it looks like it is that area that...
It says specifically, Article 71, Clause 3, for the purposes of this article, and except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, salaries, and it puts that into quotation marks, salaries includes allowances, facilities, and privileges, and retiring benefits or awards.
Yes. So it looks like we've come under the retiring benefits and awards and created this Ex-Gratia arrangement. And what makes this approach a bit dangerous is the fact that, as you rightly introduced at the beginning of the show, we have a situation where the standard employment contract arrangements for employing people in whatever organization, be it public sector or private sector, has been turned upside down. We have a situation where you come in as one of these entities, as a person under this arrangement, and you don't even know what they call your salary. Your salary will rather be determined after you have exited office.
Yes.
All kinds of back pays and arrangements are made, and that is also different from even the Ex-Gratia. And the Ex-Gratia will always be calculated on the bigger quantums. Why should it be the case that when I join the public service, I'm giving, say, an appointment letter that tells me that, look, this is your starting point, this is how much you earn on monthly basis or annual basis, and then based on the regular arrangements in the system, some adjustment will be made. Yes. And then for some category of persons, they come into office and we throw this clear-cut labor principle that our labor act supports away and say that they will be on something akin to payment on account. And then when they exit, that is when we will determine their salaries. If you want to have any, let's say, proper retirement benefits arrangement for them, let's say something akin to what is in the National Pensions Act at 766, you wouldn't even have a basis to determine what their salary is, let alone say that 5% of your salary or 10% should be put here, and maybe government should add a bit of these things to make your life comfortable. So clearly, we need to have a dispassionate discussion at this point in life and get back to where it all began. Per the history, as Dr. Kwabena Yaku gave, the initial bits of the Green Street report seem to have taken us on the right tangent. Come 1998, 1999, the agitation starts, we throw everything away, and we find ourselves in this situation where nobody is benefiting except a certain group of persons. And if you look at it, it all ends up at the political elite. Nobody is against them. But it is unconscionable for somebody to work all his life in the public service, 30 years, whatever, and he goes home with what I would describe as peanuts, looking at what others take within relatively short periods.
Peanuts. And then some are taking what cannot buy a bicycle.
And see, and the arrangements are also so bizarre such that there seem to be a duplication per whoever wants to interpret a certain arrangement. For some people, it is deemed that, for example, MPs, it is transitory, for which reason every parliament is seen as a unique one, and once it ends, everything has ended. You may come back 10 times or whatever number of times, and each time you go home with these things. It's so bizarre, and there is so much unfairness in the system. Let's be objective about this. All the people say to all of us is clear that, look, we need to have a change in this arrangement. Let's be bold, go back to the basics and do the right thing. And I think that, to start off with, every public sector person should have his emoluments clearly defined even before the man goes in or right at the start of his job. Let all of us know. And the excesses, let's be bold and cut them out. Because it is so much of a drain on our system. Look, if you look at the way our budgetary cycles go, at the end of any political, era of 4 years, the next 1 to 2 years, there is so much pressure on the public purse to make sure that all these payments are done. And now that we have expanded it, brought in people from MMDC, local people, whatever, special assistants, all kinds of persons have now been made Article 71. And probably it's about time we have a proper interpretation. And some of these acts, if the Supreme Court thinks that they are inconsistent with the provisions of 71, let's try them out. Because we cannot keep expanding the base for this Ex-Gratia arrangement at the detriment of the majority, but to the benefit of only a certain political class. How will professionals, so to speak, be made part of this? It will never happen. But the people who engage in real-time politics, they will either be appointed as special assistant or whatever, and through administrative arrangement, not even out of parliament, these people will be paid. We need to depart from it.
You know, Dr. Nyakuotu referred to some former MPs who actually took the government on for their Ex-Gratia because the calculation, they felt they were owed some extra amount of money. This was the report on the 28th of March 2017 by the Finder newspaper. 40 ex-MPs sue government for 10 million Ghana cedis. And it says it was done by Elvis Dakon, who is the editor. It says some 40 former MPs of Parliament, former members of Parliament, who served in the 3rd and 4th Parliament of the 4th Republic between January 2001 and January 2009, have sued the government, claiming over 10 million Ghana cedis. According to them, government owes each of them 233,495 as accrued monthly pension payments for the past 85 months. In addition, each of the ex-MPs is demanding a lump sum of 13,735 plus interest at the current interest rate from January 2009 to the date of final payment. The suit dated February 26, 2016, which was filed in the Labour Division of the High Court, Accra, named the Attorney General and the Ministry of Finance as defendants. Now, I don't know if a portion of this found itself somewhere in the Supreme Court or so, but it doesn't seem to have been determined. And then, I don't remember the facts. And then you had the Auditor General, who eventually, it looks like eventually some people had money to get the Chief of Staff to order that the payments be made. If you remember Daniel Doglevo, this matter came up. Yao Safomafo and the rest of them were included and issues were raised. And the Auditor General says you cannot be paying these amounts, and matters came up. So as far as these people are concerned, this is an entitlement that, you know, nobody should toy with. Martin.
That's not true.
In the Supreme Court also, there's another case over the Ex-Gratia. I think that was filed in 2017. It's Ali Plim Agbamava versus Attorney General on Article 71. It doesn't appear also that one to the Supreme Court has determined it. There are people who raise issues whether they will not determine it because it affects them, you know.
Yes, I think there's one of them they lost to. Okay, let me. There's one of them they lost in there.
I think it's the ex-MPs.
Yeah, the ex-MPs one.
It's lost. It's lost. Yes. So you say that the Ex-Gratia cannot be touched. Well, no. It can, and that's how come I'm happy we have Dr. Nyakuotu on the panel here, so that he should tell us. You know, Dr. Nyakuotu as a consultant to the Professor Ntiaboa Bedu committee, and having gone around the country, what I'm wondering, Doctor, is that you heard the people, you know, from pages 3 onwards, it was stated in the report several times that you heard people saying that no, the disparity between this Article 71 office holders and the rest of the populace is too wide, the relativism and all that. So the question is that I'm left baffled how you could have come up with recommendations for a gargantuan increase. Because your own committee report, you were a consultant, you're here. You went around the country. I remember even the last time we discussed it, I had one of the pages where even the Yana famously said, look, as you do this work, the current Yana, that think about the nurse, think about the teachers. And yet you're the same people who came with these gargantuan sums. And today you're on the panel saying what? And don't forget, you even stated, you even added to it.
Let me quote Yana's bit for you.
What he I'm interested, yes.
Yana. As you consider emolument of the president, ministers, and MPs, do not forget the teachers, nurses, and the farmers.
Thank you.
Without whom our education and health will be compromised and the nation will starve.
Oh, you are. That's it. Look, Sam, sometimes you see your former teachers and you're like, but this man taught me. Yeah. And today you see him, his standard of living is far below yours. So you see that disparity. And that's what the Yana is talking about. We quoted the last time. I'm happy you brought it. So, Dr. Nyakotu, you guys appeared very pliant. You didn't seem to have your own independence. Because if you had your own independence, from the way you're talking on the panel today, I would have expected that you'd have come out with something very rigorous, something very acceptable to Ghanaians. And so it comes back to the question here, Sam, is the whole structure of our society. It's our society. There's a problem. We don't have enough honest people. I think one day you did your take on honesty. We don't have enough honest people in our system. That's the basis of all this. So that's how come the unbridled greed is expanding. We don't have enough honest people in our society. We don't have role models. Look, ask young people. Not many will know that even a sitting president, Lieutenant General Joseph Atta Ankara, resigned over a small sum. When you read history, it's about 6,000 cedis. The equivalent, somebody will say maybe not more than $15,000. Yet, as a sitting president of Ghana, head of state, he had to resign. Whether his colleagues forced him or not, he resigned. So if we take the view that his colleagues forced him, so it means that today, we as citizens, we lack such honest people. So you see how come I keep saying that the Council of State has to give its advice openly? The Council of State has to give its advice openly because there are a number of things the current president has done, previous presidents have done. We've not heard the Council. And meanwhile, the Constitution itself says that they, on their own initiative, can do things. And so they should bring it publicly. Sam, you just sent me something that shows that a committee in the UK, this pandemic, they advised the Prime Minister and they put it out publicly that this is what we've told the Prime Minister. SAGE, Scientific Advisory Committee, SAGE, you can Google it. So what I'm saying is that so far, the main problem, the reason we are looking for new laws all over the place is that as citizens, there's a deficit in us. And it appears it's our culture. Look, Sam, for the avoidance of that, let's read something from the Constitution Review Commission report, page 778, about how Ghanaians behave. 778 tells you we see something, then we look in the opposite direction. That's how we are. Then we turn back and then blame politicians. We are all part of this. 778. Look at this. It says, the commission observes that a recent survey by the Ghana Integrity Initiative found that about 70% of respondents had been involved in bribery, in one form or another. And moreover, that 90% of them looked on unconcerned when corruption occurred in their presence. 90% looked on unconcerned. And I tried to say the local proverb in Tree the other day. Something like, if you see somebody, an Ashanti man, plundering the state to take to Kotoko, that's going back home, don't put spokes in his wheels. Don't go and report. So there's that thing that, no, we don't want to report. So Sam, you see, I'm tempted to go back to declaration of assets and the rest. So all of these, they have one mother. And the one mother is that the Ghanaian, we've not created a system that extols and praises heroes, like what Toby is done, like what General Ankara did, resigned over $15,000. Yet today, look, ministers and people make millions. And Sam, let me quickly add, as we talk now, yesterday somebody showed me a contract. There was a chief executive of one of these public development authorities. He signed a contract for 5-point-something million. Then he had to leave office. His successor comes, and the contract has been increased to 10 million. And then they put this predecessor chief executive's signature So like what he signed. So there's a piglet. You've seen that story.
No, I've become aware of it.
Yeah, so let's narrate it.
I've been dealing with this privately.
So Ghanaians, no, it's good. So that we see this attitude that will not report. So a chief executive signs a contract for $5 million. Then there is an appendix, or call it an annexure. That place, you cannot sign the signature. So bureaucrats and public officers together and whoever now take the part that you can change figures because there's no signature, and double the contract to 10 million. And yet, this chief executive signature is still at page 2. But let's say at page 6 or page 7, the figure has increased from 5 million to 10 million. And they are about to pay. Please, let's give notice to these people that if you pay that money, the special prosecutor will come after you.
My concern about that is that I was told about it and I was investigating. Dr. Akoto, I will come to you because I believe that you will have to give a reaction where you are being indicted as a consultant, and I don't know what you think the consultant can do in this circumstance.
He didn't
but in this thing you are talking about, I'm reliably informed that the president was petitioned, a full petition with all the information, sufficient particulars to the presidency, and it looks like the presidency has not been bothered.
No acknowledgement of receipt, and that's the problem. Over 5 months. So yesterday when I saw it, I was so furious. I was like, what the heck? A public officer is paid, he received, the letter is addressed to the chief of staff. So what kind of chief? And the chief of staff cannot read.
I didn't know you knew about it.
Yes, yesterday I saw it. I was so livid.
I thought I was
that
really
5 million has been increased to 6 million.
So I had
10 million.
I had advised that beyond the report to the presidency, and after how many months no action appears to have been taken,
5 months.
I advised that the matter should be taken to a certain quarters where criminal processes would have been triggered. That's the advice I gave on this matter.
Yes, and I saw it yesterday. I said, look, Kisia Jabin will deal with this in 10 minutes because I'm sure even for him as a special prosecutor, he will need a case that he can finish quickly because the president has been petitioned over 5 months. This Kukwasa, very lackadaisical. By the end of the month, people will get paid. Are we saying that nobody read the letter? And so many people were copied. So from 5 million, the contract is being inflated to 10 million. And that's why it's killing us. You see, so here we are, this kind of society that 90% will look on when they see corruption. What do you think will happen? What do you think will happen?
Let me just say this quickly.
Dr. Akoto needs to come in because Martin says something that he has to react to.
It's in line with that. It's in line with that. Martin, if you don't forget that committee, if you read their report.
Yes, that's we have it here. We are both.
I'm not speaking for the committee, but one of the principles that they were guided by was the principle of vested interest and rights.
Yes.
If you look at the trajectory of what had happened from Green Street 1, 2 to date, it is akin to something that you can describe as vested
is this committee that added the spouses? The one?
No. I'm not talking about the new one. I'm talking about the old one. And for me,
I'm talking about the current one.
No. I agree with you. What I'm saying is that principle of vested rights and interest.
Yes.
We also need to interrogate that properly. Else the plunder will continue.
Unabated. Yes.
The disparities will be widened a lot more between the ordinary public servants and those in that echelons of the public service. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Right. And I need to say that the first issue I wasn't too sure if it had been determined, and we're thinking it had been determined. The MPs who went to court about it, seeking 230,000 each, 10 million or so in excess. Their suit went against them. But it was after that they sought to use administrative processes, using chief of staff and the rest of them, and then the Auditor General also came in to say, no, this will not be approved, and the rest. Okay.
You said Dr. Otu I thought you wanted to rebut some before I continue.
Yes, Dr. Otu, I think that it's only fair that once Martin brings you on the spot.
Yes. Not necessarily rebut.
Okay.
So, yes, Yana made that point, and we thought it was a very important point. So, it was captured in the committee's report. Now, you should not forget the nurses and the teachers. But the committee was not dealing with single-span salary structure, that we could do something about them, the pay for teachers and the nurses. But if you read the entire report, there was a recommendation to the effect that the state must consider bridging the gap, and bridging that gap between the wider public sector and Article 71 would mean that you have to deal with something about those earnings on a single spine, which are paltry earnings. But you see, when you are doing work like this, it is both technical and political. So you are to revise or review somebody's conditions of service. And the point about vested interest, you take it into account. There's no way you straight away say that let's reduce people's salary. And in fact, the discussion about salaries in Ghana is not about reducing anybody's salary. It is actually about raising others, those that are earning 300 or 500 Ghana cedis a month. The question is how we raise those people. But also there's the question of how you arrest the escalating top to make sure that the gap is bridged at the end of the day. So it is important that you read the entire report and know the recommendations, the basis of the recommendations that we made. In 2019, the Minister for Finance, in one of I think when he was in Parliament for a review of the budget, indicated that they admit that salaries on the single spine are lowest compared to salary structures in the other public sector, in other parts of the public sector. So the minister was recommending that going forward, increases in the single spine in terms of percentages ought to be higher than on other salary structures in the public sector. And that is part of the attempt to bridge the gap between, say, the single spine, Article 71, and the other salary structures. So one of the things the committee did was to say that, okay, the increases we recommend for Article 71 ought not to be above what was recommended for single spine. So the committee recommended a flat rate of 10% each year for Article 71. But you see, the difficulties the committees and the entire country finds itself in is this. The committee's recommendations are recommendations. They are like the Council of State advice. So at all times since 1993, the committee's recommendation, and let me be fair to the presidents, they have always accepted the committee's recommendation. Unfortunately, Parliament does not accept it. So you have a situation where the committee has a progressive recommendation and stuff and all that. But eventually, it is a recommendation and it gets changed. Okay. But on the question of Ex-Gratia, the Yantiyamwa committee did something. And again, you should take that one into consideration when we are describing this. As part of its work, the committee met a forum called a Forum for Ex-MPs. And the ex-MPs put it to us that the payment of a lump sum Ex-Gratia to MPs is a risky venture. Because you pay that huge amount to people, something happens, they lose their money. So you now have a large number of ex-MPs that are in situations that are not palatable, in virtual destitution, poverty. Of course, somebody, and many people describe that as irresponsible on their part. But these are ex-honorables of the state. So what the Yantiyamwa committee sought to do, and it is in the report, is to transform the Ex-Gratia into a superannuation scheme that will pay a monthly stipend to MPs. So all these huge figures you are seeing there, let's invest it on their behalf. Let them also make a contribution, just like a teacher make a contribution to the Social Security. Let's have a superannuation scheme, a pension scheme of some sort, that will pay a monthly income to MPs so that it prevents them from getting into poverty and destitution. So a lot of innovations were done, were proposed, were recommended. At the end of the day, we were told that Ex-Gratia is mentioned in the Constitution. And you cannot use your report to amend or to take away what is due as what the Constitution has provided for us. And then the question of vested interest also comes in. So let me put the point that the committee's work is a technical work. You don't go review somebody's salary and simply say that, bring it down. And I mean, from a technical perspective, the problem of salary administration in this country is about how you raise the bottom.
The Constitution Review Commission's point of view was that let's have an emoluments commission that will be responsible for, and they shouldn't be dealing with just this. Let everybody's salary should be taken care of. Do you think that's the way to go, and will it bring any change? Do we need to start from a clean slate, ground zero?
I mean, so this committee's report actually picked on the Constitutional Review Committee recommendation that we needed an emolument committee that will take care of everybody. Okay. And let me not preempt, but just say that there's some work going on already, you know, of the Technical Review Committee going on. Some of the ideas is that, is it possible to stretch the single spine further so that you place all Article 71 on that spine? But all that also requires a change in the article itself, a certain amendment of the article. Okay. So there's both legal work that has to be done, and there are also technical work that has to be done.
Right.
Going on a clean slate appears the way to go, but it can be chaotic.
All right. I suppose that is where some of us, you know, would like to give consideration to what Fix the Country says. Let's overhaul.
Yes.
This whole constitutional document, it's problematic.
Yeah.
And much of the problem is traceable to this constitution. So let's overhaul it, clip the wings of the president, the imperial presidency, and then all of these Senor will say Munchendi thing, you reduce it. Yes. He's saying that there's constitutional work that has to be done, which will be like this one is entrenched.
Yeah.
Yes. You see, so you can't amend it until you go to a referendum.
And the recommendations.
But Martin, we have other places. Dr. Yankson was speaking earlier, and he said we have passed other laws, not the Constitution, in which we have given people Article 71 benefits. If you take the Presidential Office Act, if you look at that, Section 6, presidential staff shall be entitled to such salaries, allowances, facilities, and privileges as shall be determined under Article 71 of the Constitution. So we are actually increasing that, you know.
Good. Okay, so Sam, in the committee's report, they kicked against it. So Dr. Utu, that one you did well. But we still come back to the point that it's not this committee that extended the list to now include the spouses of the president and the vice. So Dr. Utu can't run. No, please, let me finish. You've had that length. Then number two, look, Dr. Utu, if you compare with America, for years, they don't increase the salaries of members of Congress. You didn't see that best practice? So when they say review, even though you cannot reduce, you could have come back, no, we are not increasing. The past that I've seen, you've seen that in the US, for decades, they don't increase the salaries of MPs. No, they don't.
Because of the dollar stability.
Yes, but Ghana too, we say it's public service. On the 7th of January, when the president was taking office, he said if anybody wants to make money, they should go to the private sector. But the actual truth is that the public sector is more lucrative. They are making more money, millions of dollars in public sector than in private sector. Look, Sam, the context of all of this, the reason we are speaking, maybe the part we need to repeat is that, like you said, these salaries are peanuts. People are making millions of dollars from contracts. As the president sits, he has friends he gives contracts to. We can't run away from it. Those are millions of dollars. Public procurement, you go through, you saw what happened to the PPA. The contracts are given based on friendship, okay? It's their turn to chop. So it's chop. So when you are making millions of dollars from contracts, you don't come again to the public purse and you are struggling for 46,000 a month and all that. That is where
that is a suggestion as if, you know, it's okay to benefit corruptly, therefore don't look for Ex-Gratia.
The problem, well, in a way, yes, I can't run away from it because the contractor brings the 10% to your house. We can't go policing that. So if I were the one, because you receive a lot of 10% on the contract, you don't even touch this. Look, Dr. Dufour, when he was finance minister, he never took the salary. He didn't. And you think he did it for free? Because at that time, I remember in the previous regime, he had businesses that were doing business with government. So he was making millions. Yes.
Martin, Dr. Tadufo, you see, there are a lot of nuances in this thing. And unless we are sober, and unless
no, please don't use the word sober. We are talking the truth.
But let's hear Dr. Otu.
Why you say somebody is not
let's hear Dr. Otu. But Martin, the case again is that there will be a few Togbe feathers in the system.
Yes. So let's
except that we don't get to know them. That's what they are doing.
Yes.
There'll be a few. Dr. Dufos, they don't take salaries. Yes, we know some of these people, but they haven't made their issues public. Okay. Yes, Doc.
So, for example, we know that the current finance minister doesn't take salaries.
But he's made so much from the Japan deal. His company made millions in Japan.
Well,
nothing.
I think we have to be careful about that.
Yeah. It's public knowledge. Public, they awarded the contract to give advice on the Japan. Data bank was part. And there are other, when we borrow, and the loans we make, data bank is always giving advice and making millions of dollars. Oh, so if you even walked into the trap, Dr. Otu, did you look at the example you gave? If you walked into the trap, the finance minister's company, data bank.
Okay, so companies that he used to be associated with.
No, that's his company, shareholder. So he's making millions of dollars whilst in public.
But Martin, it's also fair to say that that arrangement also predated his coming into office as a finance minister.
Which arrangement?
The arrangement where we had the data bank advising government
to take loans
on some of these transactions predates his era.
And that conflict when you come into.
All right, thank you. Yes, Dr. Otu. Yes, Dr. Otu.
Yes. See, I am on this panel doing technical work.
That's right.
To some extent political, but I'm not partisan here.
Right.
The reason why we don't solve problems in Ghana is that we are discussing Ex-Gratia. And then you get a whole lot of things thrown in, and then we lose focus. We need ideas on how we fix the conundrum we face today.
That's right.
It's important. The other bits about corruption, they're also important questions, but we need a platform to deal with it.
Okay.
I'm telling you that Dr. Dufo was a former governor of the Bank of Ghana. He had retired on his salary. And that is the earlier challenge I told you about, that you have people earning salary from the Consolidated Fund who are also appointed to say National Media Commission, and it becomes a challenge paying them because you can't take double salary from the Consolidated Fund. So some people then decide simply that they are not going to earn the salary. But it's also because they are already taking something from the Consolidated Fund of some sort.
Right.
So that was the point I'm making. But something,
yes,
it is important that on this Ex-Gratia debate, we take a historical view. You weren't searching for the court case I gave you. But in fact, the court case I was telling you was that in 2011, a group of MPs under Liman, Third Republic, not Fourth Republic,
right,
are taking government to court. So this is something we have been discussing all these years. It is important that we are less emotional and try to bring a closure to it. I am emotionally against the way we have implemented Ex-Gratia. And I'm in accord with the national public interest. The situation we face today is that the beneficiaries see a different view. On January 7, 2021, the leadership of Parliament, both minority and majority, held a press conference and justified the payment or the amount that was about to be paid to them as Ex-Gratia. This is the situation we have as a country.
All right.
And we ought to find ways to
deal with it. Thank you. I need to take a break at this time, but it's only fair that Suleimana gets a minute or two before we go on break and return to tie in what we're looking at now with the issue of the public services and whether or not they are unproductive, underpaid, or overpaid. Yes, Sule.
Well, Samson, I think that the extent to which what is happening is quite obnoxious is something that is accepted by consensus. We've all established that what is happening now is just not the right thing. It's not fair, it's unjust, and unsustainable. The question then is, how do we go forward? As I said before, and you have reiterated that point, the need to fix our constitution. We have a president who says, this is the constitution that has supported our democracy for the last 30 years. We need to be careful about thinking of overhauling it. At the same time, it is the constitution that is interpreted in diverse ways to create the condition that we have for ourselves today. For me, what can solve it outside of a constitutional amendment is having a leader who is patriotic, who is committed to the future of this country. And by a leader, I mean the president. And of course, if you have such a president, committed and determined to ensure that the right things are done, to ensure that these wrongs that we've committed over the years are corrected, we would begin to see some steps towards dealing with what we are confronted with. But unless that happens, again, even to overhaul the Constitution, you still require that leader who says, yes, I see a lot wrong with this Constitution, and yes, we should fix it. So it all comes with leadership, and as we go about selecting our leaders and all of that, maybe it should be part of the conversation. 2024, can we make the overhaul of the Constitution one of the requirements that a candidate must say, yes, I will do it, and when I get power, I will do it, as one of those that will determine who becomes the next president of our country. Otherwise, we just run it into a ditch and we keep going, even though we are being cautioned. We keep going. And I don't know whether we want to land into that ditch before, we start seeing how we come out of it. What is happening is certainly terrible. And it also comes with individuals of conscience. I think people must begin to ask themselves, is this thing that I'm doing right? And all the money that I have, how much I have made over the years, what would this do to me? Like Toby has done. And I think that we need to continue to celebrate people like that.
So you don't seem to agree with Dr. Yakutu when he says, once we bring in individuals and this, emotive issues, then we will obfuscate the issue, we will lose focus. But whilst, for example, to be frank with you, when Martin is speaking, I feel I should do what it takes to restrain him a bit. I find also that, bringing the human individuals' faces in it helps a better appreciation. I'm asking myself, the moral question has been asked before. President Mahama is left office, okay? He left office on his salary. We are paying him the money that he was in office and taking. As and when it improves, he will continue to take the money as it is improved. The 2 vehicles or so change every 3 years, he will continue to enjoy. All the other benefits that he is entitled, he will continue to enjoy. He would have taken his ex-Gratia, and yet he'll be benefiting from all of that. And people ask the moral question. Shouldn't an individual, for example, take the view that once I'm not there anymore and I have other opportunities, I should give it up like Toby Afede did?
Well, Samson, I think it's important to emphasize the fact that what we are talking about right now, the problem that we have, is not just limited to the current regime. So it's not an Akufo-Addo issue. I think it predates him. President Mahama supervised and endorsed it and did it, and he is benefiting from it. Now he wants to come back to be president. I think we have to ask questions. If he didn't find anything wrong with that kind of system and supervised it, presided over it, did not, make any concrete, tangible, evidential effort to ensure that this whole constitutional creation, which has resulted in this, is dealt with. I mean, how do we trust that back into office we can have the best done under him? But certainly we have to celebrate individuals who are distinguishing themselves. Like the lady was saying, we celebrated the guy who returned the 8,000, including the vice president donating 20,000 to him. What was the essence? To inspire more people to do the same thing. And yet, if the same people who see what the guy did as an inspiration, also do the same things that we are all condemning, then you ask yourself, is it an act of hypocrisy or what? And so people like Toby Afede, we need to celebrate them. People like the taxi driver, we need to celebrate them so that we all get inspired to do the right thing.
We'll take a break here and return to very limited time, try and tie it in on the issue of remuneration and productivity. But I think that the jury is out there whether or not Article 71 office holders have a conscience. We'll be right back.